Educating, informing, serving. Fact TV, keeping government honest.
Everybody, I have 5:30, so.
Yep, I have 5:30 also. So I guess I need to call the meeting to order. Jiggs, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
Yeah. Flags in the back.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Under adjustments for the agenda, I'd like to add a 10A executive session. And let's move 7B down to 10B to contract negotiations, discussion in executive session, and followed by a multiple motion.
Didn't hear.
So
Is there
10A,
anything else that somebody wants adjustments?
Priscilla, it may be useful if you turn your video off. We missed a lot of what you just said.
Okay, I'll repeat it. We're going to add personnel issue under 10A. And then under 10B, we'll move 7B down to 10B, contract negotiations discussion, so that we can have that in executive session, followed by a possible motion on that. Are there any other adjustments?
I don't have any. Doesn't seem to be.
Okay, then, are there any communication and public comment?
I don't see any out there.
Okay, minutes. My agenda didn't show the list of minutes on it. I know that was to be added to it, so I don't know if those are on your agenda there. Can you look at that and tell me?
Yes, the minutes. Number 4 is to review the minutes. Review and approve minutes.
She doesn't have the dates.
But we don't have the date.
We don't have
So
the
I have the 7th and the 22nd of February were distributed.
Okay, so do we want to approve the minutes for the 7th of February? Let's do them individually because there were some corrections.
Okay, so I'll make the motion to approve the minutes of February 7th, just to get us started.
Okay, are there any corrections? Okay. If not, can I have a show of hands as to approving those? Okay, so those passed, those have been approved. February 22nd minutes, can I have a motion?
I move to approve the minutes from February 22nd, 2022.
Okay, I did have one correction on that. I think that it should be listed as MOU rather than MLU, because we've been referring it to that as to that, and it's in 2 places. And I saw that. Are there any other corrections? Okay, so, and can I have a show of hands as to approving that with those corrections? Okay, so that motion passes. Next on the agenda is R. Smith's presentation report.
So Priscilla, I don't see them here. I'm trying to find out if something happened, and they're not able to join us. So I'm checking on that as we speak.
Give you just a minute to do that.
I have a question. Andy, have you received the management letter?
I have not received a final management letter,
Okay,
so.
because I'm anxious, I'm sure we're all anxious to see that.
Yeah, so what I shared with you was their draft, which is why some of the dates, like there was a date highlighted in yellow. That's a placeholder date. That was not an actual date that they sent us a letter. So I confirmed that with them. We had talked to them about being here tonight. The last I heard was I thought they were coming, but I don't know if something happened and they're unable to join us. So I guess if I don't hear anything, I guess if we can move that to later if they join us and then they can jump in, if that's okay.
Okay, is that all right with the board if we move that till down to right after all of the reports? Or if they come in sooner, we can interrupt and go to them if the board is willing. Can I see a show of hands if you're all willing and that's okay to move that? Great, thank you. All right, so we'll move to do you want to do the superintendent's update at this point then, Andy?
Yeah, I can do that. So just a few things. One, on COVID, since March 14th, when we had the AOE rescinded all of its COVID protocols or guidance. So we've been working with our health professionals just to update our own protocols. So what'll be coming out soon, and I'm hoping it will be tomorrow, is basically the steps that we'll follow if a student is showing symptoms of COVID in school. So basically the test, we have to get permission. We have a lot of signed permission already, but if we don't have permission, we'll be contacting home, just those kind of step-by-steps of what we'll do. And then those guidelines, just so parents have those, so they're aware of it. And then masking or face covering, it is optional for students and staff. We are recommending that folks, if they're coming into a building, that they do put on masks. And then our school task force, they're meeting and they've been developing basically what they're doing to ease back into, I put it in quotes, normal. So basically, we started a conversation today about spring concerts and things like that. So we're, how are we setting those up? We're going to maybe do them outside, we're going to do them inside. So things like that, getting visitors in the buildings and whatnot. So, so more on that to come. Just on a business office update, we continue to work with Glenn Hankinson, who's a retired business manager, and Casey Boyle Eldridge. They're doing the consulting work for us and helping us get things in order. I'm currently in negotiations for a business manager. I don't have at this point, I don't want to bring a candidate's name forward, but hopefully by the SU meeting on Wednesday, we'll have someone. So excited about that. Loads of experience in Vermont and just as a business manager. So already, the person's already been in contact with folks in our business office. So I think we'll have a good transition. And they've been working, talking with Glenn and Casey also. So, just to kind of go over it, we sent you out. In fact, Glenn had put together a budget versus expenditures or actual report, and that had the revenue on it. But just to highlight a couple of things. So right now, based on Glenn's predictions, we're anticipating $874,000 that wasn't budgeted due to tuition. So that will actually be an increase in revenues that we weren't expecting because for some reason it didn't get included in the budget for FY22. And then in total expenditures, it's estimated there will be about $924,000 that, less than what we budgeted. So that would bring Rockingham with a potential fund balance if everything right now is about $1.8 million in fund balance. We still have some things, and what Glenn wanted me to focus or point out is there's still some adjustments that have to happen. So if you look at like the substitute line, that hasn't been hit because the subs get paid out of the SU, and then we have to bill back the different districts. There hasn't been a great mechanism in place in the last couple of years of how they do that bill back, and so we discovered that this year. So they're going to be doing a bill back on this next run for September through December. So you'll see that line on your next Cognos report, the burst out that you get, you'll see that going down or getting hit. And so that 1.8 million is going to get reduced. So that's the way to think about it. So, and there's some other, just some things like in Central, one of the things we know, the teacher line is right now running negative, about 21,000. And we just did some research on that. Again, this has to do with some of the coding. It looks like the guidance counselor for Central is coded out of that line. And if you look down further on that same page, it's page 3, where guidance, you'll see that there's a budgeted amount, and then the balance is still that same amount. That's because they didn't code her to the right line item. So that's going to get changed, and you have to do a journal entry for that. And then there's just a few other things, some stipends.
What about the data facilitator category in Central?
Can you give me a page number? I
don't have a page. It's 5111. It had no budget, and it shows a $34,000 deficit.
I will have to check on that. I don't.
Well, I think when you mentioned that the guidance got miscalculated, I'm saying that this could be the miscalculation here, because.
Well, no, we know the guidance counselor was coded under teachers.
Okay.
So I will need to go back and check that. That's what I'm saying. Like, there are still some areas that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there are.
But to be very honest with you, from where we were in December to where we are now is a major change. But, just a couple of, and then like in Saxon's River, one of the other ones that stood out, this is on page 6, with the para-educator. Again, that's running negative of $16,000. That'll get adjusted. That was a para that was brought on to support a student who was not on an IEP, but that student has since transferred to an IEP. So some of those funds, they're still coded to regular education, will have to get changed and coded to special education. So,
I think you probably talked about this weeks ago, but the food service, was that just not budgeted correctly? That's on page
2.
2.
Yeah, so the food service was incorrectly budgeted. I did note that myself, and I have to look into that a little bit more, why that's running so negative, because it should never be even that high.
It's been
page 2.
It's been like that since I got on the board, and the way it works, Chris, apparently the budget for food service is over $1 million or $1 million, and there's a lot of reimbursements. But this 271 has been the same for 4 months, and clearly the budget was correct. That's what the expectation of what we were going to be charged for the year was, 80,000. And what's wrong is the 271 negative. So
again,
clearly that has to get worked out.
And I anticipate that's where some of the, there was some focus on different areas, and so we have to go back and fine tune those. So
I'd put a big asterisk on that one. That's a big one.
And so that's why I say, I mean, that 1.8 is gonna adjust as the year goes on. So.
We also, under the WNESU, the audit cost, apparently there was nothing budgeted. We show an expense of $11,600. And then under legal costs, there was nothing budgeted. And it shows close to $42,000 in cost.
So you have insurance, I am,
But I think it needs to be clear. In other words, if it wasn't budgeted, why wasn't it budgeted and what does it represent?
right.
Okay, that's, you don't have to.
No, I have to go back and look at it. I mean, why it wasn't budgeted, I don't know. That's been a mystery on a lot of things. But also, yeah, what is that? Because sometimes the terms, one of the things, Chris, like, I don't know how, honestly, I know you left right as e-finance was coming kind of on the horizon. The terms are completely different on a lot of things.
Well, I can see where things are.
Yeah.
But there's also no budget for legal services. Is that what you just said?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what it's
I know, Andy, when we were doing the WNESU budget for this coming year, they had lumped insurance all together, and we had you disperse it to the different groups. In other words, whatever is early education should be in early education, whatever's in food service or whatever. And that probably wasn't done the previous year. It was lumped together, but again, it doesn't appear to have any kind of a budget for.
But my best guess, just because of where it's placed, where it says not employee benefits, so this could have to do with workman's comp, or it could have to do with some other, like a loss somewhere, type of thing. So I'll look in and get you the answers on something.
I have one other question.
Sure.
On page 11, 15, so professional ed services, educational services for the middle school, it's just a big number and it hasn't been hit. I think I recall what hits that line, and I just want to make sure that's a real number.
Yeah, definitely. I will look into that one too, because that is a big amount.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you budget because you think you're gonna have a sick kid who needs services, and then that doesn't happen, and so you end up with something.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
But I know that the middle school does not have any non-special ed students placed out of district.
Right, that's probably what that
It could be that.
All right. Any other questions?
Andy? Andy, I think that that we decided at the SU level to do the legal and the audit as a central funded thing through the SU, and then assess it back to the individual districts. That may be why it's not on there, but Jix could be absolutely right that we might need to have something on that line to help offset in case there's any individual costs that we have. The SU, the audit though was done totally centrally.
Correct. This is FY22. So in FY23, I think we did parse those out a little bit more so that there was money in those lines at the different districts. So, Bill, I think you.
Yes, I have two newcomer questions. First of all, who's Glenn?
Glenn Hankinson is a retired business manager from, I don't remember, it's up north. I want to say Orleans, but I could be wrong. We had, when our business manager left, had looked and asked people, and Glenn has done this kind of work where he goes in and works with districts that are in need of help. And so he works remotely, helping, build sheets like this and making sure we got things that, like, I don't know that are supposed to be coming up that the business managers know, he lets me know, so we make sure we get things done on time.
Oh, so he's working for us as a consultant during
Correct.
the interim,
Correct.
and he's been on the board here.
Yes, he has come to meetings, yes.
Okay. The fiscal year 22, the $874,000 increase to revenue through tuition. When was that oversight first picked up? Do you know?
Well, so the budget in December hadn't been built into the system. So therefore, it wasn't caught until Glenn was putting this together. We knew that there had been an issue with the tuition with FY21, that it hadn't been done correctly, because that was what ended up being a big revenue increase for Rockingham from Westminster and from the UE for tuition for 7-8. So that's what that tuition is.
I see. And then we've had Ron Smith working as our auditor.
So Ron Smith, his company is our audit company, yes.
Did they pick this up? This oversight? I'm trying to, I see two horses here, and I'm trying to kind of match them up as to what they're doing. And
So Ron Smith hasn't been working in FY22, he's been working in FY21. Miranda, Brittany, and Crystal worked for Ron, have been working in FY21. And then Glenn and Casey, is a retired controller, basically a CPA. And so they've been working with our folks to basically build the budget that should have been built in the system back in June and July. And so therefore, some of the mistakes that were caught have been progressing as we've been building the budget.
I mean, it just seems to me as an outsider that $874,000 in a rather smaller sized district would be something you wouldn't.
Well, I think it reflects a failure in the business office. And in this report that you got this morning, for the very first time since I've been on the board in November, they had a revenue line. They showed revenue. I was told when I got on the board in November that they had not produced a revenue line. So nobody in the administration or the board picked up on the fact that the tuition wasn't there. So
You picked this up in November.
Well, no, I didn't pick it up.
No, but its absence was noted first in November, that there was no revenue line in the
I
budget.
suspect it was right around that November, December time, because when we had our first WNESU budget meeting, which I think is in November, Andy, Flora, or whatever her name was, she presented a sheet that was an estimate of year results for 2021. Okay. And it showed Athens, Grafton, and Westminster with a huge surplus, $1 million surplus, and Rockingham at a break even. And I said to Flora at that time, this can't be right.
Okay.
So anyway, it was then discovered that they had forgotten to they had forgotten to bill for revenue, a bill for tuition.
Bill for tuition.
So not only had they not budgeted for it, they hadn't billed for
collected
it.
nothing.
They'd done nothing. And I believe we've collected the 2021.
So one of our, so Bill, our first focus back in December, when we learned of a lot of this, was to focus on getting FY21 righted.
Okay.
And so that we could build essentially, and we were at the same time trying to build an FY23 budget. And so we're doing the two things at the same time. And And so the focus was on doing all the journal entries and correcting FY21, so we would know by the time we got to town meeting where we felt comfortable with any fund balance, so we could do that. So that was the focus there. And then we didn't have Casey and Glenn on December 1st or whenever Florida left. It took a good bit of time before they came on board. And so as Casey came on board and became familiar with the system, I asked her to focus on FY22 and start building that budget, because we knew that that hadn't been even built into the system. Because the report, the burst out report you got last week, that burst out report was coming out every 2 weeks to the boards with zeros in the rev and everything running negative the whole time. And so then we put a stop to it in December when we realized why that was happening, and then started building again. And so actually about a month ago, asked folks, are we ready to send out that burst again? And they're like, no, let's hold on again. And then 2 weeks later it came out. So they felt comfortable, they didn't feel comfortable when I asked them, but then 2 weeks later, they felt like they'd gotten to a point where they could give you guys something, so.
Okay, thank you. That's interesting. I had a question on the COVID protocol, but I can ask that later. Or I can ask it now.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
I've got a few more things, but I mean.
Yeah, I'm just curious, when we have students that get sick, either through a cold or hopefully not COVID or the flu, how do we differentiate whether or not the student has contracted COVID, the flu, or just a bad cold?
That's a good question. So that's part of what we have. So some of the things the state has provided us are LAMP tests.
LAMP tests.
LAMP, LAMP. And they are the equivalent of a PCR test. And the PCR test has been the one that you kind of do in the nasal swab, and then they send off to a lab. And it usually takes at least 24 hours before you get a return on that. And it's the most sensitive test. So the LAMP tests are the equivalent of a PCR test, but you can get the results in an hour. And so we have those available. Our health staff have those available to them from the state. And then if a student has had COVID within 90 days, the LAMP test is always going to show them as positive. So therefore you do an antigen test, which are the quick rapid tests that we get a result in 15 minutes. And if that is negative, then it's presumed the student doesn't have COVID, because if you have COVID, you have the antibodies and you're going to test positive on a PCR test. So we have these abilities. That's what I'm saying. So what we do is if we have a student who has presumed symptoms, we're going to, if we have assigned consent for testing, the nurses will go ahead and go through the testing. So they'll start with an antigen test because it's the least, it takes the quickest amount of time. If that comes back as
Negative.
We might move to a LAMP test then to verify that. But let's say it comes back positive, an antigen test is positive, then a student's positive, and then we go through our protocols of having the student go home and quarantining for 5 days without going into those things. But if a student is negative and they maybe just have the sniffles, we're going to have that student go back to class. So we're not keeping that kid out of class during that time. And so it's a conversation with families and whatnot. So.
Okay, thank you.
And if they're really sick, they're being sent home.
We follow the same protocols we've followed for years. If a student is sick and shouldn't be in school, they got a fever, they're going home and they need to be fever free before they come home. That's why I didn't read through the whole protocols, but that's basically what will be coming out tomorrow. I think the biggest thing I can say to families is if your child is sick, and I understand because I've been a parent, if your child is sick though, it's better to keep that child home than to Tylenol them up and send them to school, because they can be contagious. Even if they have the flu or something else, they're going to spread that. So that's what we're hoping.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. So just a couple more updates. The Director of Innovation and Instruction. We have a committee. A lot of folks. There's a lot of interest in getting this person in place. So we have, we're going to be meeting on Wednesday. The committee just to kind of go through the applicants and set up some questions and whatnot, and then also set dates for interviews. We have five quality candidates, which I'm very impressed. I mean, given this time of what you hear in education and whatnot, to have, you know, to be able to say like any one of those five, I think could, you know, on paper be the person. So I'm feeling really happy about that. So we're gonna work to get that kind of shored up real fast. Emergency planning. I've asked the schools to assemble their planning teams and to start reviewing their plans. We've focused so much on COVID, and it's not that that wasn't important, but we focused so much on COVID. We need to get back to looking at our emergency plans. One of the things we really identified with Saxon's River is we need two alternative sites to go to. We since learned at Saxon's River that even the contact that we had for Vermont Academy is no longer with Vermont Academy. And so therefore, if we had even followed the plan we had in place, so we need to get them updated. So they're working on theirs. The SU is working on theirs, and then we're gonna bring that all together, and hopefully, in a short period of time, we'll have those updated and be able to share them out. And then the last is we're working on summer programming. We're finalizing site coordinators, and then we should have something out to families, within a couple of weeks, just letting them know the dates and the themes and whatnot, so we can get kids signed up. We're focusing on academic, getting recommendations from teachers on those students who have suffered academically, and to invite them first to attend before we open it up to other families. So it will be free of charge to families, so I think that's a huge plus.
Okay.
And that's all I got.
All right, are there any other questions for Andy?
I've got one. And I did a search today because I think this is an Andy question, because it could possibly be a Sue question, but I'll start with Andy and we can always defer. I hear different numbers about the vacancies, current vacancies at the middle school. I've heard it's 6, I've heard it's 9, I've heard it's 11. So I wanted to see myself how many, and there's nothing anywhere. Normally I look at School Spring and you can see.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so my question is, how many vacancies are current at the middle school, and what are we doing to fill them? And I didn't see it anywhere, not on Indeed, not Simply Hired, nowhere.
Yeah, so Sue can follow up, but I mean, we are down a science teacher and have been all year. Randomly have looked for one, keep it up for a while, then School Spring pulls it down, then you push it back up. We are down one special educator who resigned early in the year. We didn't keep advertising for that because Stacy Alexander worked some other things with some contracted services to provide those services for students. What gets called in there sometimes is a special educator was moved from the middle school to the over to Westminster because there was a vacancy there, but it was deemed that the numbers of students on IEPs, it wasn't needed. So it looks like a hole, but it's not a hole at the middle school. It's just a special educator that we're dealing with. And so as far as licensed classroom teachers, that's my understanding, but Sue could correct me here. And then there are some paraprofessional spots. So like the science teacher position was filled with the gentleman who was hired as an interventionist. And so that position's open. So if you want to count both those positions open, there is a person. So there's really only one position open, but but I don't know, Sue, is that?
Hi, everyone. Yes, Andy, that's accurate. We do have some parapro positions open, largely in special education, I believe. I'd have to verify the exact numbers with Stacy. but they're largely special education paras. As Andy said, our science position is open, filled with the interventionist. SPED position open since the early part of the year. So that's kind of where we're at right now. And then a bunch of parapros that.
Yeah, we've had para positions open across the SU. And so one of the things that Mrs. Alexander does is look at where's the need, the greatest need. And sometimes that's a difficult choice to make. You might have a student in another building that originally wasn't bubbled up and now is bubbled up. And so you've got to make that decision to put the student there as opposed to getting them there.
So because they're not advertised, is there not a move to fill them, or?
No, there is a move to fill them. And I know they were advertised for a long time. I know Nicole and I just talked about it, and she was pulling things down because we're trying to refresh them. Because what happens is they kind of get pushed down.
They get buried, right?
Yeah, and so you gotta find a way to revive them and bring them back up to the surface. And so, but I do know we've been hiring staff. It hasn't been nearly what we need.
Right.
And then we get a person, and then
Lose another one.
yeah, and that's what tends to happen too. So, but I think we can get you numbers for next meeting of where we are.
Thank you.
Sure.
Are you doing any other innovative things to look for those people, Andy?
I've been talking with the Keene State College and other colleges to try and get people. I mean, they're just I think the paraprofessional is a really difficult position to fill. To be very honest with you, we used to be very competitive in the market. We are no longer competitive. So it's, with gas prices going up, that might help us a little bit, but people were willing to drive further distances for para positions in other districts because the salary was higher. I know we're going to enter negotiations there soon, but it's hard to compete when, you can get a position that, some of our students can be really challenging to work with, and you can have a position where you're not having to deal with that kind of stress and for the same, if not more money. So that's been our biggest challenge. And also, we're hopeful if we can get, the MOU through with the high school board, that might be an incentive because there is in that MOU is a sign-on bonus, and so we're hoping that might be attractive to some people. So.
Thank you, Andy.
Yeah.
Okay, so we were up to principals reports at this point, unless there's other questions. Okay, Sue, did you have anything else? Because you were on there.
Sorry, I shut my camera off. I do have a report that I can read if you want me to read it, Priscilla. If not,
it might be good to at least touch on the items in it because we looked at that. I think you shared that with us, but the public might enjoy seeing that.
absolutely. I sent it to the Rockingham board members, so they should have it in an email. But let me just read through that for everyone. Let me open the file. The staff and students at the Bellows Falls Middle School have been busy since our last board meeting to celebrate students' hard work and following school-wide and classroom expectations. The 5th grade enjoyed a movie at the Opera House. The 6th grade went sledding at the Recreation Center Hill. 7th and 8th grade each went bowling. We look forward to providing students more opportunities such as these in the future. During our February 28th in-service, the staff worked collaboratively to plan ahead for the 2022-23 school year. We have identified our school-wide goals, expectations for students, and school values. Our school-wide goals for students will focus on the district goal of social emotional learning, SEL, increasing our academic expectations and rebuilding our students' work ethic. We will continue to focus on restorative practices. Goals for staff will include instructional reflective practice and content level conversations. The academic expectations will center around our learner characteristics of completing assignments, working cooperatively, putting forth effort, showing respect for peers and adults, and following directions. The entire Bellows Falls Middle School staff identified the values that give our school purpose and will be the foundation of all that we do as we move into the next school year. We value empathy, respect, celebrations, play, patience, support, and accountability. These three critical areas will be shared with students and families as we transition into the next school year. Staff have volunteered to serve on the handbook, scheduling, and discipline committees to give voice to these three areas in preparation for next year. We are currently preparing for the administration of the SBACs. The ELA assessment will be administered on March 29th, 30th, and 31st. The math SBAC will be administered on April 5th, 6th, and 7th. Our monthly early release Wednesdays continue to focus on staff learning the restorative practices protocols where we can use communication to build community. These are our enrollment numbers as of today. Grade 5, 47 students. Grade 6, 40 students. Grade 7, 69. Grade 8, 72 for a total of 218. And our average daily attendance from March 1st to March 21st today is 199.7 students daily. That concludes my report, Priscilla.
Thank you. Any questions for Sue?
Priscilla?
Yes? Go ahead.
I just had one question. First off, I appreciate reading the Terrier Times. I started reading it online this afternoon, and very interesting, the programs that are available to grades at the middle school. My question is, the February 7th report mentions 3/4 of the students reaching behavior goals or good behavior goals, 3/4, and therefore being able to participate in out-of-school or special activities. My question is, what do the remaining 25% who don't meet these behavior expectations, what are they doing during that time?
That's an excellent question. And what they do is they have structured study hall where they continue to complete work assignments, etc.
Okay. And that has been, you see progress as far as changing behaviors through that?
Yes, absolutely. And just to give a little clarity to that, that process began with our 8th grade, and they picked 2 areas that they wanted the students to follow through on. At the time, we were all wearing masks, and keeping masks up over everybody's, keeping masks on and up over noses was a big challenge for our 8th graders. And so that was one of the goals. And one of the other goals was work completion, and it was a given span of time, like 2 weeks. And they tracked how kids did with that, and there was wiggle room for benefit of the doubt. And at the end of that time, 75% of the students hit that goal, and so they were able to go into the gym and play 4-string kickball, I think it was. And the other students worked on completion of assignments. What has happened since then is all of our grades are setting goals for students to work on, and that are specific to the grade, specific to the need in the grade. And then they are celebrating weekly, because play and celebrations are a big part of middle school. And so, as I said in the beginning of my report, now we've got kids going bowling, we've whole grades going bowling, whole grades going down to the Opera House. All of the 6th grade went up on the sledding hill. So we're seeing growth, which is what we want.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you also incorporate into that real short-term goals for those students that are, you know, really kind of feeling like they'll never make it?
Right. So what we're doing is, the goals are attainable for the students, and we build in, the teams are building in time for students to get extra help to complete their work, etc. And so, of course, now we're not wearing masks, so that's no longer an issue. But when we had the goal of mask wearing, it was like I said, we gave them the benefit of the doubt. It wasn't like we caught you once and it was blow your nose and you're out. It was like, you know, if it was a student that habitually never wore their mask, that was a different story. But if it was a student that it just slipped below their nose, we give you the benefit of the doubt. Of course, now we don't have to worry about that. But that was a big issue for our 8th graders. And in terms of work, they're doing much better at getting the work completed, and time is being built in through, there's a section of the day called Terrier Time, which is kind of a study hall, modified study hall. And so students are really working at getting their assignments in. So, and that was one of the things at the outset, I didn't want kids to be excluded. That everybody has the opportunity, but there are expectations. It's just not carte blanche. And so they're rising to the expectation. So I'm very pleased with that.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
Next.
Okay, so let's go to Laura.
Sure. Hello, everyone. It's good to see you all. Let's see. We have 76 students currently, 15 in our kindergarten, 10 in 1st grade, 15 in 2nd, 16 in 3rd, and 20 in 4th. A special thank you to Nurse Jen and our school counselor, Stephanie Fuller, for preparing our students for our new masking guidelines. They circled up with each class the week prior to March 14th to discuss the new guidelines, for students to share their feelings and needs around the new guidelines, and to ensure that students knew that it was a personal choice and that everyone just needed to be respectful of each other's decision. We have had a very smooth transition. Our Wednesday early release SEL focused PD days with our Director of Restorative Practices, Carrie Newton. They've been very productive with lots and lots of new learning and reflective practice. Carrie has also been at SRES a few times to help facilitate restorative practices given harm done within our community. And this practice really values community building, student voice, and like I said, repairing harm done. We have been very fortunate as well to have Mrs. Tina Smith, Windham Northeast Technology Integration Specialist and STEAM coach with us lately. She's brought many hands-on, engaging engineering, science, and technology lessons to our students. In addition, this week she is supporting our 3rd and 4th grade classrooms with SBAC preparations. And speaking of SBAC, testing for 3rd and 4th graders will take place the week of March 28th with math assessments, and the week of April 4th, I can't believe it's April coming up so soon, but April 4th with ELA. Our first field trip in over 2 years is going to happen tomorrow. I'm super excited for our students. They're going to be walking up to Vermont Academy's Sugar House to meet with the sugar maker, and I hope I don't ruin his last name, Mike Gia, tomorrow afternoon. So it'll be supposed to be a beautiful day and just a great experience to get out and about and learn about sugar making. I, along with other principals in Windham Northeast and Windham Southeast, continue to participate in the Leadership Academy. And our next professional development day is tomorrow and upcoming April 5th and 6th. And that's been some really great learning with my principal colleagues. Sandy Stanhope, who you know our SU's been working with specific to math, will be here at SRES on Thursday, March 24th, and again on the 28th to continue her work with classroom teachers around math practices, including the implementation of the math workshop model. Also super excited. We are finally getting a school-based clinician beginning next week. We have been without a school-based clinician all year, and so I'm thrilled to have Doug Francis joining our team and to begin work with our students individually as well as with small groups. A building update. ServPro removed the dryers in the 3rd and 4th grade classrooms as the moisture levels were within the normal range, so that is really encouraging. I wanted to be 100% positive that those rooms were safe, and so the moisture and air quality samples were taken by American Indoor Air Quality Assessment Services on Friday, and we're anticipating the results later this week. So for now, students are in their alternate spaces. As Andy had mentioned earlier, we are working as a safety team once again and fine-tuning our safety plan, including exploring 2 other local options for relocation sites. And so that work has started. And just an upcoming date, our 2nd trimester ends April 1st. Are there any questions?
Board members, any questions?
Thank you.
I just had one question.
Bill, go ahead.
Priscilla, to either to Andy or to Laura. In the event of a broken pipe, a water main or a sprinkler main, do we have to wait for the local fire department to show up, or can the custodian be proactive and once it's assured there's no fire or there's no other threat to the students or the building, can he or she turn the water off at a main valve?
I would want to double check with the fire marshal, because I have always been under the impression that only fire can make that determination.
Right. I suspected as much, but I remember during your report, Andy, 20 minutes went by in which water was going into the building.
So I think the times were a little different. That was the information. Laura could maybe tighten that timeline a little bit, because I do believe the custodian actually did turn the water off.
That's what I thought.
Okay.
At the time of the
did.
report, I didn't have all the information, so.
Yes, he did, and the water that was coming into the building was already within the pipes, so it was just, making its way through.
Okay, thank you.
But we need to double check, because my understanding is, number one, we can't turn the water off, and number two, we can't enter a building until fire gives us the okay. I mean, given the circumstances, I learned afterwards the kids were standing in ankle-deep water out in the fields because it was pouring that day. I think they did the best with the best information they had, and I would support them 100% with the decisions that they made.
Absolutely. And that's, this particular leak was in the sprinkler system, which is a pressurized system.
Right.
So of course, you shut the water off, but there's still going to be water.
Right, I understand. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's, it's a good thing to check, Andy, and find out so that all of us are aware and all of us know. However, I am personally want to say that I applaud everybody for, thinking about the children first and making sure that you got them out in that everything was followed in that kind of a situation. But you're right, that water in the field, you're facing two different aspects, so that makes it difficult.
And Jim DeBell and Rick Schumann have praised Bert, and I don't know his last name because everyone just refers to him as Bert. So
Bert Lawrence. Bert Lawrence. Yeah, if he acted so quickly and professionally in every sense of the word, and really did a phenomenal job to minimize damage.
on top of just getting things off and whatnot, by the time I got up there, which was not too long of a period after Laura had called me, he had already had the little Zambonis out and had sucked up quite a bit of water, which actually minimized damage flowing down. So, it could have been a lot worse. And I think there was some swelling in the floors that has gone down now a little bit. So pine wood, pine floors and water don't mix, so.
Very good.
Again, like we were saying about the Bellows Falls middle schools issues out there, Laura, I always enjoy seeing the things that you put out for your school. And that goes for Central too, and coming up next. Those are just so helpful, and I think parents get a lot out of those as well. It keeps us all updated. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for that compliment.
You're welcome. Okay, if not, we'll move on to Carrie.
Sure. Good evening. Let me just pull up my notes here. So thank you for everybody. We currently have 154 students at Central. In kindergarten, we have 30 students. In first grade, we have 22. In second grade, we have 34. In third grade, we have 28. And in fourth grade, we have 40, excuse me. We do have 2 of each grade in our grade levels from K to 4. So just want to update, we have our PTCO meetings. We just had the last one on the 15th. So we've had the largest attendance since COVID has hit. So right now we are still doing via Zoom for the family's convenience. And we had 12 families that attended this, or 12 different people attended that one, which was lovely. We do encourage many more people to come. We've asked them for a personal challenge to try and reach out and grab somebody else to come to the next meeting. We hope we can get some more attendance. And typically they're the third Thursday of the month. This past one, because it was St. Patrick's Day, was held on the 15th. And then also in April, it'll be on the 28th due to vacation being the third Thursday. Just a reminder, there is April vacation coming up. Not that it's too rushed, but that will be happening as well. So we're planning on more family gatherings. And so hopefully we'll have some updates on when we can have some more events in person. I do want to do a shout out to our task force that worked on the masking protocols that updated with the new mask guidelines. Our team had met, and we will continue to meet to focus on the needs for the larger groups and continue for field trip planning. Similar to what Laura was saying, we have Sandy Stanhope is coming to our school. She's our math coach from the All Learners Network. She will be here on Friday the 25th, working on coaching with all of the teachers. We have Picture Day coming up on April 7th, and just a reminder, this is with Life Touch, but it is also a fundraiser. So if you were wondering about doing it, we always welcome that, and it is an extra source of funds for the school too. In addition to that, we also have a local fundraiser with holidays. And so they will be doing the soups and the dips and the cheesecake mixes and set prices. And so they are working with us on getting that launched. And we appreciate that support and want to keep it local. So be on the lookout April 11th for more information on that fundraiser. Just a reminder to families, please to try and send in an extra sweatshirt. Even though the weather is getting warmer, it's still, we are still closer to the river and it can get chilly at times. So just to have a child have a sweatshirt, kind of Mr. Rogers style, you can leave it at school if you want to, or a light jacket, just in case it does get colder or windy during recess time, or just miss a little habit. And just a shout out to all the families. Thank you for your help on getting students to school. The arrivals between 7:50 and hopefully no later than 8. Families have gotten much better at that, whether it's the time change now or not, or just a more concerted effort. We do appreciate everybody trying to get the students in so we have more time in class and they are in before 8 o'clock. Just as a reminder, we're just, as we mentioned about the financial part, we're looking at the end of the fiscal year, believe it or not. So we're monitoring our spend down needs and ensuring that personnel have what they need to keep their classrooms going, any events coming up, things like that. So we are pretty tight in our budget as well, but just making sure that there's last minute efforts for purchasing that needs to be done for the remainder of the year. I want to just do a big shout out to Jody Hauser and Kelly Green and Cindy Rollins for getting their work done on the One School, One Book. The books have arrived, so families stay tuned. We'll be getting those in April and having some special projects coming up. And I don't want to give it all away, but there'll be some neat events happening too. And so for those who don't know, everybody gets the same book, a copy of it. They get to bring it home, launched during vacation, and then coming back from April vacation, looking at really how we can all answer some questions, read some chapters. It's a fun time. We do some raffle kind of tickets after the kids get to do some trivia questions. So a huge shout out to the Rotary. They've been working with us on identifying needs and helping to meet those donations. Some are in-kind donations, some are direct donations from different groups, and then some will hopefully be some in-person volunteer work to work in our gardens. So we thank you for that. Also, we have our SBAC coming up too for the week prior to April vacation, and then the 2 weeks after April vacation, we have the next set for math or literacy, depending on which grade level. So it's our 3rd and 4th graders that will be taking the SBAC testing, and then we actually have MAPS testing at the end of May. So not trying to wish away the rest of the year, but we're just putting it on people's radar. As Laura was mentioning, the report cards are coming up, the closing at the end of March, and then report cards are sending out right at the early April. So those deadlines are fast approaching. So you'll get an update on how your child is doing at school. Any other questions?
Are there any questions from the board?
I have one question. Carrie, I'm curious, what's the book for One School, One Book?
I think I can give it away. It's Charlotte's Web.
Charlotte's Web, okay.
Yes. We are working on some bigger projects toward the end too, if the students get to finish it, so.
I have a question on this because on March 29th, there's a joint meeting on the use of the land by Central School there, where the school was. And I didn't put it on as a separate agenda item, thinking that maybe along with your report, we should think about what our concerns are. I heard during election day, but there's some that are thinking about a garden area, some that are thinking about a tree planted there, but there's also a new one just this week that wants to do senior housing there. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know what the board wants to do, whether we want to attend the March 29th meeting as a group, whether you want to make some comments here about your concerns and have one of us go to that meeting. What do you feel? And also, Carrie, I'd like maybe you to weigh in on what you feel about that space.
So we certainly appreciate the input there. We have had a lot of discussions as a school. Jody Hauser is our media specialist, is doing a lot of work with our farm to school gardens as well, and is really interested in looking at a comprehensive plan for how we could make that a school community garden, and to be able to incorporate families, to be able to get the students down and dirty into the dirt right there. If we were able to get that as a garden, we do have some small beds that we're working on the back, but this would give us ideally a lovely garden space to bring our project-based learning to life across multiple grade levels. Right now it's 2nd grades, but this would allow us to expand it from K to 4 and hopefully pre-K to 4 while they're there. And really looking at how we can get families involved, just nutrition information. 2nd grade team, Kate Kane and Judy Verespi have really worked hard with Erica, Frank in our kitchen services, and Peter Lowry actually as well, is really bring this project-based learning to life across the 2nd grades. And again, to expand that across multiple grades would be wonderful. It's a green space that's lacking. We notice it when we go to other schools. Certainly Westminster has a lovely space that's eyed. Obviously even Sexton's River has a little more space as well. And so if we were able to do it, I've heard many comments since the building has come down about, wow, we see the school. We didn't even know there was a school there. And it is a real nice boost for people to hear. It's like, wow, we do exist. Sometimes I think because we were hidden, people didn't know. If you didn't know we were there, you didn't know. And so that is nice to have the visibility at the same time. And so people recognize the school is there. I am more than willing to attend any meetings if you'd like. Andy, I don't know if there's other updates on the team at all, or.
Priscilla,
Go ahead, Jigs.
On the 29th, the the trustees and the select board have a joint board meeting. There's many items on that agenda. I haven't seen the agenda yet, but is that the meeting you're talking about?
Yes, because at town meeting, when we had our annual town meeting date, they said that that was the date that they were going to be discussing this. And that anyone that was interested should be coming to that meeting. And so
Well,
I've been looking
I'm on
at
the
different
trust-
things
I'm on
out
the
there as
trustee.
far as the ideas.
I'm on the trustee board, so I will be at that meeting, that joint meeting. And like I say, it'll be, I think it'll be a fairly brief discussion, so I wouldn't get all hot and bothered about it at this point. I think Peter Golick, the chair of the select board, made it clear at our town meeting, at least in the school budget portion, that between the town and the village, we have probably $80,000 tied up in that piece of property. And the selectmen are anxious to sell it. So I think that if that's the decision that they make, and the trustees don't make the decision, the select board makes the decision. If that's the decision they'll make, then we'll just have to wait and see what they put it on the market for. But like I said, in terms of any big, pleas or that kind of thing, this is one item in a pretty long agenda, so I wouldn't get too worked up about it at this stage.
Except that I know I've been told, as Rockingham chair, that is a very important time for us to be there to express the kinds of things that we want, and there are several different ones that are doing a presentation on it that night. Like I said, this new one on senior housing just got added this week. So I do feel that as a board, we need to, if we're interested in doing like things like Carrie wants, I mean, we've talked about the possibility of a garden, expanding playground space. We've also talked about a possibility of a small building where we could have small facilities for preschool and learning centers, although we may
Well,
need
anyway,
larger
I'll tell you what,
space than that,
I'll talk to
rather than that, but those are options so I think the school probably is interested. I'm personally interested. I don't know. I would need to know if my other board members are interested in where they stand.
I will check with Scott Pickup and see what, because like I say, that what you're describing as at this meeting is nowhere near what the board's understanding is, okay? So there's I think there could be a miscommunication here. I will check with Scott Pickup tomorrow morning and let people know, because there could be a different meeting that day. I have no idea. Our meeting is at 6 o'clock. And as I say, it's a joint meeting. So it's, I can assure you that the trustees don't want to sit through presentations on what people want to do with that piece of property. It's just not appropriate for that meeting. So let me clarify it, and I'll send an email out to you tomorrow morning.
Thank you, Jigs, for doing that. I really appreciate that. Since that meeting is before, we'll have another meeting. If we need to do something, if we don't decide that we're interested tonight and want to at least express an interest, then we'll probably have to have a special meeting before that. Is that okay with our members? The board members, or do you have other things to say? Let me hear from each of you. Bill?
Just through you, Priscilla, to Carrie, it may be helpful, and I understand the point that Jim brings up. Also, as a taxpayer, that a lot of money went into keeping that property safe through because of the owner's negligence, and I'll just leave it at that. It does smart to lose a landmark through negligence. But it's gone. and we have to get some lemonade out of this lemon. I support some type of a Grow to Eat program that links for children, small children, where their food comes from or where their food should come from. Should, because we know a lot of our children don't have nutritious meals. And some of that is because of cost, obviously. Inflation now isn't making choices any easier. But if we could set up at an early age a connection between what we can grow with our hands and what we can eat, and go back to locally sourcing our food and what we use on a daily basis, I think the benefits could be immeasurable. And we could do our small part on pushing the next generation towards self-sufficiency as far as feeding themselves, not relying on outside corporate interests for their food and nourishment, and also the immense satisfaction that comes from doing something with your hands, getting your hands dirty, knowing how nature works, knowing how seeds become plants and how the plants give the food, that nourishing food that we all need to eat. If somebody on your staff, you mentioned somebody on your staff, Carrie, could just do a one-page proposal that would list the students that could potentially be involved, the staff that could potentially be involved, just a proposal as to what to do with that property as far as growing food. Just on one page, just a general overview, that might be helpful, something that people could look at on paper. That's just thinking off the top of my head because I didn't prepare tonight to speak to this.
Well, it's not on the agenda and we should really get moving on. I mean, this is taking way too long.
Well,
Jigs, he's got the floor.
oh, but I see the floor. I don't want to monopolize either, but I think this is an important issue.
Okay,
Thank you.
Megan, do you have anything to add?
I have nothing tonight, Priscilla, not for this.
Okay, thank you. Chris?
Right, it's not on the agenda, but, and do keep in mind that if you have 3 board members go to that meeting, you then have to warn a school board meeting in addition to your audit. So just keep that in mind.
Well, if Jigs is there as the trustee, he's not going as our board member, so, and we would not be having a discussion with him, so, I hear what you're saying, Chris, I understand. And it's a good point, and I appreciate it.
I mean, there are workarounds.
Thank you for making it. Appreciate that. Okay, all right, let's move on then. Any other questions for Carrie? Okay, buildings and grounds, that's Jigs and Chris.
We had a meeting this past week of the Building and Grounds Committee. I thought Rick was well prepared for the meeting. We basically talked about each of our 3 buildings and the capital needs that have been listed and in some cases priced out. By way of summary, the roofs are a big issue, particularly at 2 of our schools. Security for our schools is an issue. It takes many different forms, but I would list it under security and building management systems, systems that we can use the computer to monitor more and more things about our building and its health and its functioning. Those are kind of the big items. The real question at this point for our board is with the ESSER committee considering this large amount of money that they have for building improvements for our students, it's going to be difficult for us to plan anything specific until we get better guidance from the ESSER committee. So I think we've vetted the issues well, and I think we're going to track it very closely with what the ESSER committee comes up with. Anyway, that's it as far as I have. Chris, I didn't know if you.
No, I thought it was a good meeting, and we got a good overview of what the needs are currently.
Yes, ma'am.
James, do you mean we've got to watch and see what the ESSER funds, if they go to potentially what you guys have identified, and then after it gets dispersed, we come back and look at what wasn't? Is that what you mean? You're waiting to see if?
Well, in a sense, but for example, let's assume that Andy and the committee that's looking at appropriate uses of that money. Let's, for example, say building management systems wouldn't fall under that.
Okay,
Well, then that would be a green light for us to start addressing those
perfect.
types of things. So
We just have to wait and see what.
yeah, because there's no sense spending
Yep.
our nest egg if we can get the.
And if I could just jump at the one thing that the state has not been real clear about is like, if we identify a need, like let's say the roof needs to be fixed and it needs to be fixed today, type of thing. And Rockingham expends the funds, but then that is an expense that would have been covered under the grant. Can we then charge it back and get reimbursed? Because I've asked some questions to the folks up there that they say they've never had asked before. So it's one of the questions we're asking, because again, if we identify a need and we know that ESSER is going to take a long time and it's going to cost more if we wait,
Right.
if that's allowable, then, then that'll help the committee make.
Absolutely,
more
yeah.
decisions, so.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you very much.
Is there any type of audit or assessment that's being done through the ESSER committee?
So we're waiting for the state to give us the green light, because we pushed it up there. And I was told that possibly tomorrow I might get a response. So as soon as it gets approved, what I don't like to do with grant money is I don't like to assume that it's going to be approved, because if you assume it's going to be approved and it isn't, then you own it. And so I'd rather, wait a couple days. So as soon as I get a green light on a facilities audit, we will do an RFP and get going on that piece.
Okay, so Jigs, are you saying that's what you're waiting for then, is that type of thing? And then to determine where to go?
I just said, do you have a question, a specific question?
So you're waiting for that decision on the audit?
Yeah,
But I would add, the audit would just be the beginning. The whole process around this money is convoluted, to say the least.
It's a good word.
Wow, the state make it hard to, spend grant money? Gee. So getting things like a new roof is going to take a number of more steps and a lot of follow through from the SU and Jim DeBell, who's now the facilities person for the district. So it's going to be a process. It's going to take time.
Okay, thank you. Were there any other questions for the Building and Grounds Committee? All right, we didn't put policy on there. We will do that next time. There are some things, but those will go in next time. We do have negotiations committee, and basically there's been no meeting for support staff. So at this point, there's no update for that. We did move the other negotiations down to the other. Andy, did you hear from R&H Smith? Because we had kind of moved that to this point.
Hang on, let me just double check. I believe they were not able to, something happened with Miranda's computer, I believe. and so she wasn't able to log on. So we're asking her if she can be available next month.
Okay, on the April 4th one or later in the month, the second one?
We're shooting for April 4th because we wanted them to be here today, so.
Okay. Okay, so we'll get that scheduled. Hopefully that's okay. Are there any questions on that report that you guys looked at that you want to cover now, or do you want to just put the whole thing off until they can be
So
here?
with all due respect, I would ask that is in draft form. And it was actually, I just provided, because I know it is a hot topic for board members. I wanted them to know that it was in a process and not, I would just be concerned that it's not finalized at this time.
Okay, all right, thank you. So that kind of answers that question. I appreciate that. We will put that off. All right, we're looking at 7A, which is COVID protocol, and that's kind of been covered. Are there any additional things that you want to add under 7A, the old business, unfinished business COVID?
I don't at this time.
Okay. And board members are all set?
All set.
Okay. Okay, under 8A, the emergency program, which was the next thing, you kind of covered that too under superintendent's report. Did you have anything additional under there?
No, I didn't.
Okay, and board members are all set with that?
Yes.
Oh, Chris.
Let me
Chris,
just say,
go ahead.
I was the one who requested this item just because I had a sense from an incident that the planning needed to be revamped. And really, all I wanted to hear was, we're on it.
Yep.
We're doing it. And I encourage you and the principals not to discuss any details of these plans, like where your evacuation places are
Yes. Yeah.
at meetings.
I only brought up Vermont Academy because that one's been open, that's been talked openly,
I know.
so we know we need to look at something new, so.
There are reasons why
Yep.
we don't, and we as board members don't need this information. We need to know that the schools have plans, but it is not our business to know what those specific plans are. So I'm happy with what you.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you for the principals also for working on that.
Thank you, Chris. All right, so we're up to director's comments. I'll start with you, Jigs.
I believe there's a SU board meeting Wednesday night. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
And I am available to go as a member of the committee.
Okay.
But other than that, no, I don't have any comments.
Thank you. Bill?
No comment at this time, Priscilla, thank you.
Megan?
I don't have any tonight. Thank you, Priscilla.
Okay. Chris?
No, I don't. I will also be going to the SU meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that at the,
It will be at the high school
High school.
in the family engagement room.
And what we might
At
want to
6:30.
6:30?
6:30, correct.
Okay.
Well, I'll add to my director's comment, even though I said no. Of course. As you create the agenda, a good thing to do is to just have under the reports a supervisory union, and that way we report back to the board after a supervisory union meeting. It's a good way to do that and sort of have everything lined up.
Make sure it gets on there.
Okay. All right. So I would entertain a motion to go in. Maybe just remember to be kind and considerate at all times. And I would entertain a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing negotiations, contract, and a personnel issue where any premature public knowledge could place the individual or the board at a disadvantage.
So moved.
Okay, Megan, thank you. A motion has been made to enter into executive session for the purpose of discussing negotiation contract and a personnel issue where any premature public knowledge could place the individual or board at a disadvantage. How do you vote, Jigs? Because I can't see you. Megan?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
And Chris?
Right.
And we will also add to that, if it's okay, to invite the superintendent.
And any other administrator.
Any other administrator that wants to attend at this time, yes, we can invite them as well.
Dangerous.
Okay, all right, and I'm seeing no objection to that. We're entering into executive session. Okay, so we're back from executive session, and we would entertain a motion on the contract.
Okay. I move to approve the collective bargaining agreement as negotiated and to authorize the chair to sign the agreement on behalf of the board.
Okay, the motion has been made to approve the teacher's contract, ratifying the contract, and authorize the chair to sign for the board. Diggs, how do you vote?
Aye.
Megan?
How about yes?
Oops, Bill?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so that's unanimous. And this will come up at the SU on Wednesday, so we have 3 reps, so I'm expecting that at least our board will be representing our wishes on this, and that we'll at least have 3 out of the 9 voting for it. So we'll see, and hopefully it goes well there.
Yes.
Okay.
Move to adjourn.
Anything else?
Have another
Pardon?
thing?
All we have to do is set the next meeting. So.
Yes, we have to set the next meeting. Yes, please, before we adjourn. This meeting would be on April 4th at 5:30. We would have contract roster at that time for approval, and maybe an update on the revenues and expenditures that we started a discussion tonight. Do you have any other agenda items to add tonight?
The auditor.
The audit, yeah, the audit will have to become on the RNH. We'll have to come back on that one. And so if there's any other agenda items, please get those to me. I will be sending out reminders next week and asking for any additional from the board members. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. If not, I guess we probably don't even need to do anything. We'll just adjourn, move to adjourn, so we're adjourned.